Okay, so this is going to be my Lin 578 week 6 homework. Sorry in advance for the setup. I like can't find a way to get the presentation and my phone also filming me and get both on camera. Besides the point. So we'll get right into it. So let's just pretend that I'm standing up and there's a slideshow behind me on a smart board, and this is the presentation. All right. So this is going to be about, just really quickly to cover this for everybody, is going to be connecting with your class, and how we could do that as teachers. All right. So the first thing that's going to be very important to do is make eye contact. Okay. So actually look at your students in the eyes. All right. So a lot of people don't understand how important this is, and you might not realize it a lot of the time, but oftentimes a lot of people, what they do is they're just so focused on everything else around the room that you're not actually focused on looking at the students while you're speaking to them. So this is actually pretty important because it has been scientifically proven that when you make eye contact with a student while you're speaking to them throughout a lesson, it really just helps link up that connection between your brains when you're both looking at each other. And it's also just been scientifically proven that when you're looking at somebody, that you make natural implications about whether or not you could trust them and things like that. So really important, make eye contact with your students when you're speaking to them. The second thing that's going to be important is going to be show vulnerability, okay? So I wrote right here, just when you open up, they open up. And this is a nice little infographic that kind of just shows how that works, right? So the idea behind this is that when you show that you're more of a vulnerable person, then they will respond to that and they'll be more willing to be vulnerable as a person. And this is important because this really just helps them see the different side of things, right? And then as a result, they're able to adapt and develop a different perspective on the content they might be learning. And just as an adult, then they have that ability to be able to do that when they're out of the classroom. So of course, just don't share too much when you're trying to be vulnerable with your students, right? Because you don't want to come off as just weird sharing too much personal information. Not a good idea. On to the next. So the third tip that I have for you guys is going to be make your students laugh. Okay, so this is okay. A lot of people think that this is like not a good idea to allow your students to laugh in the classroom. You don't have to keep it super strict 24/7. You're allowed to have one of those lighthearted conversations and make them chuckle a little bit. All right. However, you do have to limit this, right? So you don't want laughter to control the whole room. That's not going to help you, because then you're not teaching the content at that point that you need to get done by the end of the school year. So just make sure that they're still concentrated, right? But if you could connect a short story that makes them laugh to your content, then I think that's something that's really important that could just help them build that connection to what you're trying to teach them and get them more interested. Oops, whoops, on to the next. All right. So number 4 is going to be park your ego. All right. So this is very important. If you're somebody who is often full of themselves, and I know I'm somebody who might do that every once in a while too, where you just talk about yourself and everything's about yourself, you gotta relax, okay? This is very important. So really what you gotta just do is be yourself, right? Be yourself. If you're somebody who's stoic in the classroom, that's fine. Act stoic. But if you're somebody who's more goofy, don't be afraid to act like the goofy teacher, as long as it's reasonable, okay? And just allow the students to enter the discussion on things too. Like, don't make everything self-centered. So the final tip is going to be just tell a story, okay? So always try and tell a story when you're in the classroom. This is going to be something that's pretty important, just because it really helps build that connection between the students and the content. So if you could share something personal about a time that maybe you failed and then worked at the thing that you failed at and got better at that and connected it to your content, then maybe a lot of the students would be able to connect because they also had an experience like that in their life. So that's going to be my short presentation, and thank you so much.